Hey everybody, welcome back. And I said I would do a separate video on it, and let's get into it today because I want to talk about that Bilt Wells Fargo Wall Street Journal article because it really doesn't make sense every time I read it. So if you didn't see it, the Wall Street Journal published an article this past weekend about how Bilt is costing Wells Fargo $10 million a month. Sources on this are current and former Wells Fargo employees. They get statements from a Wells Fargo spokesperson. They get statements from a Bilt spokesperson. The Wells Fargo spokesperson, the Bilt spokesperson, they give basic boilerplate. Okay. They claim that there are renegotiations happening. They do not state whether or not they've confirmed this with their sources, be they current or former Wells Fargo employees. And I put those air quotes around it because a current or former Wells Fargo employee could be anyone in the chain. It's a really, really loose definition because if Bobby the mail intern who got fired for whatever reason thinks he knows something and he's got a friend who's got an in with a reporter, he can tell them, I've got this, tidbit here, and it just get reported as not fact, but reported and then potentially verified. There's not a ton of verification in this article. Now, it goes on to state that Wells Fargo is losing that the sources claim that Wells Fargo is losing $10 million a month, and that there's a renegotiation that's happening with Wells Fargo's contract with Bilt, their co-branded contract with Bilt. While that may be the case, they also highlight that the contract that they're currently running is going to be running until 2029, and that Wells Fargo has already stated that they're not going to renew the contract. If Wells Fargo's already said they're not going to renew the contract, why would Bilt have any incentive to renegotiate things in the interim with Wells Fargo if they're milking Wells Fargo for $10 million a month? Aside from the side note that Wells Fargo has been a major investor in Bilt at pretty much every turn except for the most recent January round when they announced that Roger Goodell, of all people, and Kenneth Chenault joined the Bilt board. Chenault as director of the board there. I don't think anyone coming from the banking industry, like Kenneth Chenault, would say, hey, let's screw our banking partner. So if this renegotiation is actually happening, okay, maybe it's not that great, but it would also be coming from a position of you have a fiduciary responsibility to us to help us because Wells Fargo is an investor in Bilt, and companies have responsibilities to their investors, be they public or private, to make sure that their investors don't lose as much money as possible. There's an understanding that there will be money lost, but profits down the road should more than offset that. So the article just gives a lot of loose statements and doesn't seem to understand how Bilt works, or at least the rental portion of Bilt works, because there is the co-branded credit card, right? The co-branded credit card, in terms of paying your rent, you set up a Bilt account that can be linked to your checking account. It is the Bilt Protect feature. If you set up Bilt Protect, it draws from your checking account. It does not charge against the card. If it's drawing from your checking account and it's not drawing against the card, how are there interchange fees for that process? There aren't. And all you have to do to get the points that you would do through this process is make 4 more transactions on the credit card. Now, for lack of a better term, meme posters on places like Reddit, because I've seen it on the Bilt Rewards subreddit, continuously tell you how all you have to do is do like a 50-cent Amazon reload 4 times and you get your points. Right. Amazon is now $5 a pop, but people are still going to do that. Why? Because paying $20 and still getting 2,000 points for rent is far more in your interest as a person than putting a minimum spend through the card. So I get it, right? But these meme posters are also going to be reading an article like this and going, we're costing Wells Fargo $10 million a month. Down with Wells Fargo. Yeah, Wells is still going to find a way to extract value out of you. So if you're not going to sign up for a Wells Fargo card, well, guess what? They're going to make you use their co-branded card with Bilt a lot more than you want to. Just wait. So the article goes on to say that Wells Fargo didn't plan properly, that Wells Fargo expected 65% of spend on the card to be non-rent related spend. And given that the card gives you 6 times points on dining, on rent day, gives you 4 times points on travel on rent day and 2 times points on everything else on rent day. It's not a terrible assumption that people would then use rent day as a day to spend a lot on their cards and then still have a really strong card for things like travel and dining and everything else where they still have to make their requisite number of transactions. So yeah, they weren't planning for the 4 packs of gum. They weren't planning for the 50-cent Amazon reloads. They weren't planning for all the ways that these conditions would be exploited. I see loophole, I exploit loophole. Well, Wells Fargo and Bilt are more likely to close the loophole than continue to lose money. How do we know this? We already have one prime example, Curve. Curve was a value prop that when a loophole was shown that you could move transactions from your Freedom Flex or your Discover or whatever that were dining related, you could move them back in time and put them on rent day and get 6 times points for them. Bilt eventually got rid of that. I wonder who was instructing Bilt to really push that, because Bilt is generally a chill company. You know, they want to find ways to give you points. They want to find ways to like make you travel more, make you potentially use the card more, make you happy with their program, right? They're relatively chill, but they are going to find ways that when there are loopholes being exploited, that they're going to close the loopholes. Curve is an example. I'm sure the Amazon 50-cent reloads are the next example. Now, Amazon has recently upped that reload price from 50 cents to $5, mostly because it was probably hurting Amazon's bottom line, but it also didn't help that credit card processors were probably calling Amazon saying, please raise this because we're not making enough money on this either. So there's that. So going back to the article, it's very loose. It doesn't sound the more I read it, the more questions I ask, like, okay, well, how much in interchange fees is Wells Fargo making off this card, or how much in interchange fees are not being processed? When was the burn rate $10 million? Because if the burn rate was $10 million before Bilt introduced status and status tiers, has the equation changed? There's a lot of loose ends, and there was a Globe Street article earlier today, very short and condensed. I think there's a fuller article if you sign up for Globe Street. I'm not going to do that right now, but Bilt and Wells Fargo are both refuting the article. You had Encore Jane, the CEO of Bilt, put out a statement kind of saying that, you know, a lot of the customers that we're sending to Wells Fargo are brand new customers. Wells Fargo has not come to us about renegotiating this, that, and the other thing. Folks are going to call that damage control or copium or whatever. Just is what it is. But here's what I know or understand to know. Wells Fargo is an investor in Bilt. Wells Fargo will go to Bilt and say, for your investor value, for your investors, you need to be doing X, Y, and Z. And Bilt will take that into account. And I'm sure other investors, if there are things affecting their bottom lines as well, will go to Bilt and say, it is your fiduciary responsibility to fix this for us. Now, I don't know what BlackRock has or Left Lane Capital has to go to Bilt with in terms of a concern, but if they were to present concerns to Bilt, Bilt would have to take them just as seriously. Do I think that Wells Fargo is going to pull out of a Bilt co-branded negotiation? No. Do I think Bilt will make changes that will affect the credit card? Yeah, probably. But that's because Bilt will want more money out of the credit card as well. You know, as soon as I saw this, there was a number of things that I posted in the venture capital Discord that Bilt can do to offset this. One, and I think you're going to see this a lot sooner than you want if you're someone who's exploiting the Bilt card with just, 4 little transactions here and there. One, there's probably going to be a minimum spend requirement instituted to get your full rent points, or you're going to get 250 points a month for rent, just like you get when you miss out on the transaction. I don't know what that number would be. I would assume something around $1,000 a pop would make a lot of sense. I'm sure there will be a number that will be not too much for consumers, but consumers are going to kvetch and complain and probably claim they're going to cancel the card, except they won't. There'll be a number like $750, $1,000, $1,500 a month on the card, and that number will just be a break even for either Bilt or Wells Fargo. So they're going to stop. They can stop the bleeding that way. They can do plenty of other things like Bilt Gold members and Bilt Platinum members, folks who put spend on their credit card, on their Bilt cards, or do a lot of other associated spend through Bilt, could be offered things like 1.5 times points for rent if you're Bilt Gold and 2 times points for rent if you're Bilt Platinum, because they know that they can trust you as a consumer with their card to put money through that card, and they're going to reward you even more. Much like airlines, much like hotels, the more status you have with us, the more we're going to reward you. You definitely see that coming. I don't think you're going to see Wells Fargo pull out of the Bilt deal. That doesn't make any sense. The article also referenced things like Wells Fargo executives who were brought in to negotiate co-branded deals have since left the company. Yeah, because co-branded deals don't usually come up that often. So if they were brought in for co-branded deals and there's no co-branded deals, or they went in on a co-branded deal and they lost to someone else, they didn't do their job, and Wells Fargo is not likely going to keep them around. The biggest one that's out there right now that I can think of that might be out there is American Airlines is supposedly renegotiating their deals with Citi and Barclays. If American Airlines was a real possibility and Wells Fargo executives approached American Airlines and lost, I don't think you keep those executives around, right? And why are co-brand deals so important to credit card companies? Well, look at the American Express and Delta partnership. Delta co-branded credit cards account for 1% of US GDP spend. Like, enough spend goes through those cards that it equals 1% of US GDP. That's insane. Chase is going to hold on to United for as long as they can. Citi will hold on to American Airlines for as long as they can. You don't see co-branded opportunities come up all that often. You're going to see things like Hotels.com, which Wells Fargo had, and that partnership didn't work, and Wells Fargo got rid of the Hotels.com card. But choice privileges came up as a possibility. Choice and Barclays came to irreconcilable differences. Choice went over to Wells Fargo. You're going to see these smaller partners because the big companies, Chase isn't going to lose Hyatt. Chase is going to do everything in their power not to lose Hyatt. Chase is going to do everything in their power not to lose United, Citi and American Airlines, Delta and American Express. You just see how both sides have every incentive to make sure that partnership stays strong and that they renew. So Wells could be looking for that most favored partner. Bilt is probably going to be that for the time being, but until a new partner can arrive, until a new partner can hit the street, there's not a whole lot of opportunity, right? Like, Wells could be negotiating with Omni, for all I know, to create an Omni co-branded credit card. Does Wells want to do that? Possibly. Does Omni want to do that? I don't know. You could see like a Four Seasons branded credit card at some point. Wells will probably be trying to negotiate that. They're in negotiation. They're going to be launching an Expedia. So there you go. I think there's going to be more to this story over time, but I very much question the Wall Street Journal portion of things. So until we find out more, we'll just have to wait. But if you like what I do, hit the like and subscribe button down below. Check out ways to help me out in the pinned comments. I thank you in advance if you do. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.